Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So yesterday, I looked at every single Eastern Conference's team's number one priority heading into this offseason. So naturally, now it's time for the Western Conference. And as I have up here, there's no rest in the West. The West is an absolute bloodbath, way better than the Eastern Conference at this point. So these teams really need to hit on their offseasons, especially their number one need, in order to potentially get out of the Western Conference, which the Edmonton Oilers have done the last two seasons. And up first, we're going to go with the Edmonton Oilers, and I think their biggest need, number one priority, is addressing the goaltending. Evan Bouchard also needs a contract, but you cannot run back the same goaltending. I think they're going to figure it out with Evan Bouchard on some kind of long-term deal. Goaltending, you need to get creative. You cannot run it back with Stuart Skinner. If I'm Connor McDavid, I'm not signing an extension. I'm not even thinking about signing an extension until you bring in an upgrade in net, whether that's the obvious John Gibson. They really should have went after a goaltender last offseason when there was guys like Linus Ullmark or Markstrom, more consistent guys. But John Gibson, after the season that he just had, can you make something work with that? Jake Allen, although I don't think he's a massive upgrade over Stuart Skinner, potentially bring him in. You got to improve the goaltending because although even if they had amazing goaltending, I'm not sure that they beat that 2025 Florida Panthers team that really just was an all-time team. It is something that has been so bad basically consistently throughout their playoff runs. They've just been able to overcome it with their star power. You got to get a goaltender. You got to shift it up, or the most talented player in the world might end up not re-signing with you. Next up, the Nashville Predators. Their number one priority is pretty straightforward. You got to hit on that 5th overall pick. When looking at it, they have a good prospect pool, but it's a lot of quantity over quality. They have like 7 or 8 B to B plus guys. Maybe you could argue Matthew Wood is an A- guy, but with this 5th overall pick, this is going to be their clear blue chip guy. I think that they're in a pretty good spot considering the 3 through 8, 3 through 9 is kind of all up in the air. So whichever guy that you like at 5th overall, you just select. And they don't really have like some teams need to go like defense, like the Seattle Kraken. Some teams need centers. Whoever you like there, just select them. And I'm not sure if they're going to be like horrendous next year because when you look at the underlying numbers, especially that we've talked about before, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team, but this might be the highest that they pick in the next 2 to 3 years. So you got to hit on that 5th overall selection. If Barry Trotz does not hit on it, he should probably be fired in 2 to 3 seasons. If that pick's not progressing, as well as the bad contracts that he signed last offseason, this could be Barry Trotz's saving grace if he really hits on it. For the Chicago Blackhawks, I'm going to go with bringing in an impact forward. Last offseason, they brought in Teravainen, they brought in Bertuzzi, who were solid, more so middle six guys. They need to swing on a potential guy. I'm not saying like a 32-year-old, but I'm talking like an Ehlers, like a Besser. Get Bedard some actual help. So although Ryan Donato went out in his contract year with 30 goals, 30 assists, I'm not sure how sustainable that is. You need to get someone to play with Connor Bedard and help develop Connor Bedard. Maybe that deal, maybe a Besser deal would not look fantastic in the final years, but they need to bring in some talent to kind of nurture their young guys. Frank Nazar needs some solid talent to be playing with, and as a result, they need to be targeting the big names in free agency. The San Jose Sharks, I think we agree that they're going to be selecting Michael Misa 2nd overall, assuming the Islanders go with Schaefer. So I'm going to go with an Eklund extension. When looking at it, he's the first guy that's going to be extension eligible from their young core. The current core pieces, Celebrini and Smith, are next offseason because Smith didn't sign his ELC last spring. He's on the same cycle as Celebrini. So it's Eklund. When looking at Eklund, 45 points last year. This year, 58 and 77, and especially his defensive metrics really improved, and his plus-minus went from like the worst in the NHL at minus 45 to only minus 7 this year, still on the worst team in the NHL. I think Eklund has all the makings, especially playing with potentially a Celebrini or a Smith, to be a 70, 75 point guy. So I think you slide him over like the Dylan Gunther deal, 7 years, or Gunther's might have been 8 years, low 7s, and you just lock him up, because if you don't sign him this summer and then he completely pops off and goes for 70, 75 points, he's going to want $8.5 million. And then Celebrini and Smith on July 1st, they're going to want $10 million. And I think those all would be good contracts, don't get me wrong. But if you lock in Eklund pretty low this summer, and I think based off the first 2 years, you know you have an elite player on your hands, that's going to help you just going forward with negotiating for the rest of your core. So get something done with Eklund long-term. Don't bridge him. You have all the salary cap space in the world. Get something done so when he does pop off this season, you have him cost-controlled throughout his prime for the most part, basically. Get that done, Mike Grier. For Seattle Kraken, I'm going to go with taking a defenseman at 8th overall. When looking at them, they have so many goddamn forward prospects and young guys like Beniers, Wright, Cadden, Rakoff, Chalet. Like, they need a goddamn defenseman within their system. I like Riker Evans. Probably caps off at a good second pair offensive defenseman. So when looking at it, unless a guy that they absolutely love falls to them at 8th, but again, like 3 through 9 is kind of indistinguishable. I think they should select the defenseman 8th overall. Like, I am a best player available guy, but when your prospect pool is so lopsided, and unless Seattle plans on sucking, but even next year, there's more so forwards at the top. There's the one guy in the WHL, I'm blanking on his name, Verhoff, that's going to college next season. You got to take a defenseman at 8th overall, and you got to actually have some kind of future in terms of your defense core. For the Vancouver Canucks, you got to bring in a center right now, as well as probably draft a center at 15th overall, but also you might have to trade the 15th overall pick to get a center. They already offered, apparently, Marco Rossi. They wanted to give up the 15th overall pick for him. But yeah, with this team, the way that Pettersson played in the second half of the season, he was like a third-line center, if we're going to be honest. Hedl is just far too injury-prone. Pia Suter, amazing season, but I don't see him replicating a 25-goal, 46-point season. So yeah, get aggressive, try to target a center, whether it's in free agency, whether it's in via trade, and try to draft one if you do keep that 15th overall pick, because that is a clear concern after they lost JT Miller, and now with Elias Pettersson's kind of shaky play going forward. The Dallas Stars, they're already working hard, but I'm going to go with dumping Matt Dumba. When looking at them, they dumped Mason Marchment. They somehow re-signed Duchesne and Maverick Bourque below $5.5 million combined. That is absolutely blowing my mind. The Bourque one, especially considering like he would have got an offer sheet at $2, $3, maybe even $4 million. But yeah, they were able to bring back those guys. They have $2.7 million in salary cap space right now, so they still don't have enough to bring back Granlund and Ben. But if they dump Dumba and his $3.75 million cap hit, that gets them close to around 6.5. You could definitely bring back Granlund. You can maybe get him signed something close to like a Matt Duchesne $4.5 to $5 million deal, and then just sign Ben to like a 3 to 4 year deal at like around $2 million. And you don't have to trade Jason Robertson, which was always stupid as hell. But yeah, it starts with dumping Dumba, as well as potentially dumping Lyubushkin as well. But now, especially after dumping Marchment, which I also did like that deal a decent amount for Seattle. But yeah, now they actually have the salary cap to make this work without doing something really stupid, which trading Jason Robertson would have been. Next up for the Minnesota Wild, you got to get a center from the Marco Rossi deal. You got to get a guy that is better than Marco Rossi right now at the bare minimum. If you're going to move off Marco Rossi, you need to get a legit second-line center, especially considering it is the final year of Kirill Kaprizov's contract. If you throw him with Ryan Hartman like you have in prior years in 2021 and 2022, I wouldn't be too keen on re-signing with the Minnesota Wild. So although I don't love the idea of trading Rossi, I understand if Bill Guerin wants to play this physical style of hockey, which we have seen work for the Florida Panthers, but they're obviously skilled as shit as well. But yeah, Rossi is 5'9". If you are going to trade him, you better trade him for an immediate upgrade, or you better get a bunch of picks and prospects that then you can go flip for a legit second line center, because the Minnesota Wild should be contending at a high level, and they should not have. I love Eric Sinek. Not a true number one center, can be your number one center with elite wingers, and especially if he's your number one center, you got to have a decent second line center as well. So that's what Minnesota definitely needs to address. For the Anaheim Ducks, I think that they should swing for a forward. They have a shit ton of salary cap space, whether that's Mitch Marner, whether that's Nikolai Ehlers. Give Leo Carlson some real talent to play with on that first line. They brought in Chris Kreider, only a 2-year deal, 6.5, more so leadership. I think that he is going to bounce back. But while you have this salary cap space, I think you use it. I think you do something aggressive. They did take a big jump in the standings last season. I'm not saying on like a Killorn kind of 32, 33-year-old's long-term deal, but a guy in his late 20s, bring it in, let him help develop some of their young guys. They got to re-sign Dostal as well, but that's a lock. He's not going anywhere. They're matching literally any offer sheet. So yeah, for the Anaheim Ducks, bring in a forward, swing for the fences. Why not? The Calgary Flames, move off Rasmus Andersson, man. 28 years old. You have Zane Parekh in the system that's also a right-handed defenseman. Trade Rasmus Andersson, who only has 1 year at $4.55 million. They would get an absolute haul for that 1 year rental, and I'm sure someone else would give him the egregious 8-year, like $8 million contract that he is asking for. After last season, you can't really mess around with this, considering he had not a career low, his lowest point total at 31 points in the last 3 seasons. He was a minus 38, while Weegar was a plus 18. So yeah, trade him. Please, for the love of God, Craig Conroy, trade him. I know that you sold heavily at the 2024 deadline, and now you're trying to stay competitive. That's dumb as hell. Rasmus Andersson is going to be your number 3 defenseman relatively soon. So giving him the amount of money that he rightfully so is going to ask for because of more so the prior 3 seasons where he was a pretty damn elite top pair defenseman doesn't make sense for this team. I'm not saying you completely nuke it. Like, keep Mackenzie Weegar for sure. He is such a good defenseman, and he can help your young guys develop and just probably be the captain after Mikael Backlund, Jesus, retires. But yeah, look at moving off Anderson for sure. If somebody's willing to pay a decent amount for Nazem Kadri enough to retain any money, maybe trade him as well. But keep Weegar, and Huberdeau's obviously not going anywhere with that contract. But Anderson definitely should be gone. And next up, the Colorado Avalanche. You got to repair that relationship or convince Martin Necas to stay, considering the fact apparently he was not that happy. Colorado basically has no money to spend, so besides potentially re-signing Necas, who would kick in the following season, not this season. That's all you got to worry about this offseason for the most part. You cannot risk Necas, who is a UFA, even though he is only 26 years old. He's a UFA next summer. He's not an RFA, so you don't even have control over him. So if he's dead set on hitting the open market, you might have to seriously look at trading him this offseason, but try to work on that relationship and get him to re-sign, because that'd be wild if he walks for nothing after he was the key piece in the Mikko Rantanen trade. The Winnipeg Jets, the second line center position. Yes, they got Jonathan Toews, and yes, those bonuses absolutely blow my goddamn mind how it might end up being a $5.5 million contract if he just plays 50 games and they make the playoffs. He's not a second line center. Even in his 2 years after he missed the 2021 season, it was on Chicago, but he was like a 40 to 50 point okay guy with not that great of defensive metrics. Like, he is ideally your fourth line center. Lowry's your third line center on an actual contender. And then you have that second line center. And at this point, it's looking like that they're going to re-sign Sandberg, re-sign Velarde, but Ehlers is gone. So they're going to have some money to spend, some money to potentially make something happen. And again, they need a second line center bad, because Nemestikov, good player, but he was in part benefited a lot from playing with Nikolai Ehlers. If you're losing Ehlers on that second line to boost your second line center, it's going to be ugly in terms of what their second line might look like compared to some other contenders in the Western Conference. Please, for the love of God, I know that they tried to get Brock Nelson at deadline. He said no, but try to figure something out. If you're a Cheveldayoff, you cannot be rolling in with the Lowry or Toews as your second line center. It's just not going to get it done in the Western Conference, where there are such loaded goddamn teams. The LA Kings, similarly to the Anaheim Ducks, I say you swing on a big-time forward. Gavrikov is probably going to hit the unrestricted free agency market, and as much as you would like to re-sign him, I see the logic that they allowed the second fewest goals against this season, as well as analytically were the best at 5-on-5. In terms of defense, you still have Mikey Anderson on the left side who can play big-time minutes, and you need to give, although the righties, you need to give Spence and Clark more minutes, so I can understand that, but with that money that you're going to save by not re-signing Gavrikov, they have around $21 million after they re-signed Lafreniere, as well as some depth pieces. They'll have $10 to $13 million. So whether it's Mitch Marner, who would by far be their best forward on their team, and maybe would give them a chance to finally beat the Edmonton Oilers or a Nikolai Ehlers or something like that, they definitely need to improve the forward core. The forward core is deep, but in terms of top-end game breakers, which although Marner and Ehlers have had their struggles in the playoffs, I think we can agree that they are extremely talented. That could be the difference for the LA Kings finally getting over the hump next season, a.k.a. the Edmonton Oilers. For the St. Louis Blues, speaking of the Edmonton Oilers, ex-Edmonton Oiler, Dylan Holloway. You got to get an extension hopefully done with Dylan Holloway this offseason. They only have like $6 million in cap space, so they really can't do anything aggressive unless they dump Matthew Joseph, Nick Leddy, their contract. That would open up around $7 million total. They have Joel Hofer as an RFA, but he'll re-sign for like $2 to $3 million most likely. They'll match an offer sheet or something like that. So I think it is Holloway, who had 26 goals, 37 assists, 63 points in 77 games. And more importantly, basically as soon as Montgomery took over in his final 55 games, he had 22 goals, 33 assists, 55 points. I think given his high-end skating and skill, at the bare minimum, he's going to be a consistent 55 to 60 point guy, has legit 70, 75 point potential, especially playing with some of their talented forwards like Thomas and Kyrou. So I think you lock him up on some kind of 7x7 when looking at it, similarly to a Matt Coronado kind of contract, and just let him age into that. Even last season, he was probably worth $7.5 million. He doesn't have the track record completely to justify 7.5, justify $8 million. So you lock him into that cheap deal, and I really can't see him not being worth that considering the tools that he brings to the table. And then you have Kyrou locked up at 8, Thomas locked up at $8 million, Holloway locked up at $7 million. Maybe not true superstars, but those are Holloway eventually, 3 very elite players, very cost controlled. Get it done, St. Louis. 2 more to go. Vegas Golden Knights, go after Mitch Marner, man. This is such a Vegas Golden Knights. I said it like a month ago, like, don't be surprised if they're going after Mitch Marner. I didn't have any sources, but like, it's already starting to build that they're going to make something happen. They're already saying, Nick Cage, we're going to trade you. We're not giving you $3 million. You need to keep that salary cap space open. They'll probably dump a Carlson, dump a Hurdle, who are still positive value players. Those are not going to be like trading them for absolutely nothing. They don't really have any bad contracts on their book, point blank, period. But to afford a Marner 7 by 12.5, who Marner is younger than those two forwards, still in the thick of his prime. And I think we agree he's going to become a playoff demon the second he signs at Vegas. Him and Jack Eichel are going to go on some kind of deep run. It's peak Vegas. Just get it done. And then lastly, the Utah Hockey Club, or Utah Mammoth, my bad, the Utah Mammoth. I'm going to be showing the logo. Just figure out what you're doing with the 4th overall pick. The 4th overall pick is all that matters really for them this offseason. They have a lot of money to spend, but seemingly based on the reports, it's going to be more so depth instead of swinging, like Mitch Marner is not going to happen for Utah. So with the 4th overall pick, if you really like a guy, if you like Brady Martin, try to trade back. That's what I'd say. If you really like Caleb Desnoyers Frundell, which I would personally do, a bigger center to kind of complement a Logan Cooley or mesh better in terms of team fit-wise than a Logan Cooley, who's more of a skill guy. You take him 4th overall. If a great deal pops up like a Noah Dobson or like a JJ Peterka, not for the 4th overall pick, but something like a 9th swap, not Peterka in the 9th, but like a bunch of assets, or you maybe move back a little bit, you can still get Brady Martin, but then you're also getting like a JJ Peterka. They just got to knock this out of the park because this is really a blessing. It's a good problem to have for them going from 14th to 4th overall now, but this is going to be huge for the trajectory of their franchise. Are they going to be ultra aggressive and trade this 4th overall pick for immediate help where the expectations are fully to make the playoffs if they trade this 4th overall pick for a roster guy? Don't force that. It's got to be a serious difference maker, potentially like a Noah Dobson. Or do you draft it, stay the course of kind of this rebuild, kind of this Gunther to now core? And even next year, if they take the pick here, they still probably should make the playoffs next year, or definitely be in the mix considering they were this season. But yeah, this is a big inflection point for the Utah Mammoth, and I'm really interested to see what they do. And that's clearly their number one priority this offseason. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these biggest needs? Which ones would you change? Which ones would you agree with? We're just fully in freaking off-season mode. I think tomorrow I'm doing like a staying or leaving UFA edition. Now some of the UFAs are signing extensions at this point. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.